Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
What is happening, Rush Nation? Here we are. We are back with the matchup show and testing a new piece of technology. Let me know how you find the mic. Is it good? Is it not good? Switch to a wireless mode for some of these shows and also to do a bit of different content as well. So we're going to test it out. We're going to see what we think. But we're not here to talk about this. We're here to talk about matchups. And we're in week 3. There's injuries, there's tactics. We're kind of getting a feel for the good teams and the bad teams. My rankings are up to date. You can find them all in the Discord. But we're going to go through in about 30 minutes and talk through tonight's game and the 1 o'clock, 6 o'clock slate. That's 1 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock British time slate. And then we will break for the day. We'll be back tonight for the flagship show. Danny and I taking your questions. And then tomorrow we will wrap up with the rest of the matchup. So let's get ready for the week. It's time to get some dubs in the column and let's go ahead and focus. And tonight's game might be probably the most one-sided Thursday night football we're going to get this season. And it is the Bills versus the Dolphins. And it is a game that's going to be very one-sided, I think. The over-under is set at 49.5. So expecting the Bills to put a lot of points up because they are 12.5-point favorites, by far the biggest favorites of the week, and the pressure is mounting on the Dolphins. Let's be honest, the first 2 weeks have been abysmal. They get no respite here, and we had a show with Joe Pisapia in the offseason. He didn't think they'd last 6 games. I thought they might last 9 or 10, the coaching staff here. Looks like Joe might be a bit closer to the right answer than I am, but we will see how it goes. I don't have a lot of hope here for the Dolphins here. I do think there is some fantasy relevant players here, but there aren't many for the Dolphins. We're going to start with the QBs. I think Josh Allen is my QB1 this week. It's a perfect matchup for him. Divisional matchup. They're not going to want to relent. They're going to want to pile on the pressure on the divisional rivals. I have Tua down in 28. He just hasn't looked good, and it's not entirely his fault. The play calling has been abject. There's a lot of other things going against them as well, the defense in particular. But, you know, I don't have a lot of hope for many Dolphins this week. And so Tua, as a result, is down in 28. As for the running backs here, James Cook, he is my running back 8 this week. I think the game script suits. He got 100% of RB touches last week, pretty much close to that. Good rushing yards over expected last week. Expect him to continue that fine run. Devon Achane is my favorite Dolphin from a fantasy perspective. He is at RB11. Not touching anyone else here. Ray Davis all the way down at 51 is the next best mentioned fantasy running back here. Moving into the wide receivers, and actually the highest wide receiver here I have is a Dolphin. It's Tyreek Hill. I have him at 20. I just feel at some point you're going to have to give him the ball. He's arguably the most talented receiver on this roster. You're going to have to just find a way to get the ball to him, even if it's these really short screen routes or trying to find just slow slot routes, just something to get him on the ball and spark something. He's your best home run threat. He's your best threat of points in the air. You have to get the ball to Tyreek Hill. So I have him at 20 this week in the hopes that Mike McDaniel has worked that one out. Keon Coleman I have down at 36. He's a decent flex option this week. And they're really the only receivers I want to start. Khalil Shakir's at 51. Jalen Waddle's on a questionable tag, so keep an eye on that one. But I wouldn't start him anyway. He's at 52. Josh Palmer is at 60. Tight ends, there's not much extra to shout out here. No, Darren Waller, he is still out with an injury. And I have Dalton Kincaid at 15. He's borderline flex play. There might be some upside for him, especially in this matchup. We will keep an eye on that one. As for the defenses here, the Buffalo Bills are at 3. This is a great matchup for them. I do think they will struggle to score too many. The Dolphins I have at last, at 32nd. There's no rhyme or reason to start them this week. And then as for the kickers, Matt Prater continues to stand in. He is the kicker 4 for me this week. Riley Patterson is all the way down at 28. we move to the Sunday slate and we have Titans v Colts. This is a great opportunity for the Colts to go 3-0, and I think the line is pretty generous to have a go at if you're a betting person. The Colts are only favored by 4.5. They've looked really good to go to 2-0 on the season. The over-under is set at 43.5. Again, they've been pretty potent on offense. I definitely think there's an opportunity here to bet the over and bet the Colts at better than +4. So I do like that opportunity there. If you're looking at these, I think that the Colts are going to dominate this game. Yes, the Titans are kind of in a rebuild. We know it's going to be something that is going to be a challenge, and we know it's going to take time. So we're not pouring gasoline on the fire here. I definitely have more hopes on them moving forward than I do a few teams in the NFL, but it is going to take time for it to get going. Daniel Jones for me, especially when we're getting tush pushes in here, is at QB 11 this week. Cam Ward is at 29. I still think he's figuring it out. It's not a besmirch on him why I have him there in my rankings. And this Colts D is pretty good. Jonathan Taylor is my running back 5, and I really try to get him higher, and I think there's a play to get him higher, but at the moment he's at 5. I wouldn't be too shocked come Sunday if he's actually in my top 3. That's how highly I rate him at the moment. He's a must start. Tony Pollard getting 100% of the RB snaps is down at 21. It's only the game script and the lack of high value touches that are going against him, just down to the general play of the of the Titans. My mind just blanked there. Apologies. Moving on to the wide receivers here. There isn't really a highly ranked wide receiver here. And if it is, it's definitely on the Indy side. I've just sort of hedged a little bit of Michael Pittman, very bullish after week 1, but came crashing down to earth in week 2. He moves down to wide receiver 40 for me, with more work going to Josh Downs, though he is questionable if he's out. I tell you now, the biggest jumper in my rankings, if that does change to an out, will be Michael Pittman. He'll be touching wide receiver 2 status, just because of the targets per route run that Josh Downs is running at the moment. He was at 34% last week, but the snap share was lower. As for the Tennessee wide receivers, the one I really want to own is Ike Omenor. I've got him in most places. He's my wide receiver 38, and he is fast ascending into the wide receiver 1 of this team. I do have Ridley slightly ahead of him this week at wide receiver 34, but I don't think that's going to last too long. I think it will be definitely reversal in fortunes come a week or two's time. Tyler Warren does have a questionable tag. I do expect him to go. He's my tight end 4 this week. Not as bullish as I was last week, but the guy is an absolute monster. Chicken Konku is at 22. I think there's some flex appeal for him. I do think that usage will continue the more plays they run, but it is going to take a bit of time. The Colts are down at 9. The Titans are down at 25. But Spencer Schrader, he is a kicker who has been absolutely juicing it so far this season. He's at 11, and I probably have him a little bit low if I'm truly honest, but I struggle to get him any higher than that. Joey Sly for the Titans is at 24. Moving on to just showing some more of my running back rankings whilst I go into the next game here. And the next game here, if I'm just pulling up the slate, is Panthers-Falcons. Panthers-Falcons. Falcons favored by 5.5, over under 43.5. Falcons D's been really good. Panthers have been, again, fairly abject, I would say. Showed some signs of life late, but they're really, again, looking like another season they're going to finish bottom of the pile of the South, although the Saints will have something to say about that. I think the pressure will get on Dave Canellis at some point here in this second season if we don't see any improvement out of Bryce Young. We haven't seen any as of yet. Michael Penix, think this will be a good game for him. I talked about him in the waiver wire. I do have him at 17, but I think there's an opportunity for him to rise from there, certainly. Bryce Young, he is at 26. There's no real room for him to climb too much further than that. I do think that he could have an amazing game being behind the game script, but against this Falcons defense, I'm not so sure. Bijan Robinson's at 2. I think this will be a really good week for him to take advantage of this and really make the most of the opportunities presented to him, especially with the game script. Chuba Hubbard is at 20. Tyler Algier is at 36. I think, especially if they get up ahead early and managing the game, Algier is going to be a worthy flex play this week. As for the wide receivers, Drake London is at 7. Ted McMillan is at 16. And Darnell Mooney, who still has a questionable tag, is at 54. They're the only wide receivers I'm interested in. We're seeing a bit of a renaissance from Kyle Pitts. He is at 9, and he is definitely the tight end in this game I'd want to start. But keep an eye on Ja'Tavion Sanders. We're starting to see some interest in him, and we're starting to see more targets go his way. I'm not interested in starting Renfro, even though he had a good week last week. I just think I'm going to stick with, fading it this week. I just think this Atlanta D is definitely a step up from what they faced last week. The Falcons DST are at 5. They're a great play this week and should be available on most waiver wires. Carolina Panthers are at 31. And obviously, we have seen a kicker change in Atlanta, and Parker Romo is indeed the kicker. He is at 13 this week. Ryan Fitzgerald of Carolina, he's at 29. Again, not a player that I imagine is on too many fantasy rosters, but we mention him all the same here. Next game up in this slate is the Commanders v. the Raiders. This is an interesting one. I'm surprised that the Commanders are only favored by 3.5 over an under set of 44.5. I don't think the Raiders have impressed too much. They really struggled against the Chargers on Monday Night Football. It's a short week. I'm not quite sure why the line is set here. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think this is a line that has split a number of bookies here. You've got the original open was at 7.5. And I know a little bit of this is on Jaden Daniels, which I guess is why they're shrinking it down a little bit here. But still, I think even with a backup quarterback, I would expect the Commanders to get the job done. And I imagine that I just think at the moment, all the news and everything I'm seeing does lead to Daniels playing. And so if you're getting 3.5 right now, it does feel like a market opportunity to take advantage of that price. Because I think the bookies are just sort of hedging and following sort of traditional trends. But I do think Jaden Daniels has every chance to play this weekend. But we're waiting on sort of final confirmation at this moment in time. There is news that, again, it's a sprained knee. So it kind of will depend on him. But I'm looking at this and thinking that Marcus Mariota is more than capable enough to come in for a game and hand the Raiders. So, and sorry to Raiders fans, I just think that's the way we're going, especially with the offensive line of the Raiders and struggling to get Gene T involved here. We go to the QBs here, and I do have Jaden Daniels at 4. I do expect him to go this week. I do have Marcus Mariota at 33 right now in my rankings, so we'll see what happens. Moving over to Geno Smith. This is Dope Special Geno Smith. He's at 19, but again, he's going to lack that fantasy ceiling that we have talked about time and time again over the previous week. So not going to rehash that too much. GT I have outside of RB1 range. He's at 13. That offensive line is massively hampering him. Bill Krosky Merritt, he's at 24. I think he's going to get a good amount of workload, but I think Jeremy McNichols, I currently am hedging at 52 because of that questionable tag. I'm not entirely certain he is a full go. If he's not, Chris Rodriguez, who I have at 65, will be moving up significantly. But if Jeremy McNichols is a full go, he'll probably be ending up somewhere around RB 42. That's kind of where I think I'm going to put him if I don't move too far from there. As for the wide receivers in this one, I have Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin back to back at 25 and 26. I think we haven't seen the best of McLaurin. I think it will come through, but we're probably still a week or two away from that happening. Jacoby Myers is at 32. He's definitely a start option in most leagues. I'm not worried about any other receiver in this game as it stands right now, although don't be too surprised if someone random gets in the end zone. And this one, Zach Ertz is at 7. Brock Bowers is at 1, despite the questionable tag. He is still playing through injury, but I do expect him to be fine this week. And then Washington I have at 14. The Raiders I have down at 28 because I do think Daniels is going to go. I will revise that if Mariota plays, but I still think even at 3.5, Mariota will hand them a dub. So the kickers I have back-to-back at 19 and 20 this week. And again, it's not for anything other than I just think there'll be more touchdowns than there will be field goals. That's kind of where I'm sort of thinking of this particular game script and why I have them where I have them this week. Browns v Packers. Packers, second biggest favorites of the week. They are sitting here at 8.5. And again, Packers really showing they're the real deal. I sat there and said I wasn't too confident that they were going to win last week, and they won handedly. The over-under set of 41.5. It's really besmirching what they're doing on offense, the Cleveland Browns. And I actually think they're a better offense than people are giving them credit for right now. And even though I have Joe Flacco ranked low, it's not because I don't think they're capable. It's not because I don't think they're going to put up points. I actually think they will. I think the over is a good bet here. But I just worry about how much he's going to go through the run game versus the pass game. And I think that narrow passing opportunity means I'm probably going to lean a little bit against Flacco. But I also wouldn't be shocked if he threw out a 400-yard game chasing this one, trying to get a victory at all costs against Green Bay. Jordan Love at 15. He's doing a good job right now. Joe Flacco's at 30. And again, just for the reasons I just sort of stated there. As for the running backs here, I have Josh Jacobs at 10, though he does carry a questionable tag. Keep an eye on that. Quinton Judkins I have at 27. The guy got 15 touches off 20 snaps last week, and it's a sign that they want to use him. Jerome Ford is not a thing anymore, so I'm really looking to see how Judkins takes over. Dylan Sampson, he is at 46, so he's a player I'd be looking to get involved more and more. But I'm hedging a little bit because I'm just worried about the pass volume in this one. But if it still continues to trade out, this might be a really good opportunity for him here. As for the wide receivers in this one, obviously a lot of flux of what's going on in Green Bay at the moment. So we look at the best wide receiver option I have in this game at the moment is Tillman at 43. Jerry Jeudy at 46, Romeo Doubs at 53. I have really hedged this field, although I do think Doubs is the man to own. Golden at 56. I know he was 0 catches last week, but he missed 2 touchdowns. It wasn't his fault, the throws that were on, which would have really changed the whole outlook of the week. And Wicks at 57, which is why I've got them all in the 50s. But it wouldn't surprise me if Dobbs is the one that really usurps up. But I have been conservative. I want to see how it works without Jaden Reed this week. Tucker Kraft, tight end 2 this week. He's someone I've got a lot of stock in. In fact, sorry, I just realized I've got this on. I had that on standard. Apologies. I have him at 3.5 point. These are half point I'm showing. So yeah, one to keep an eye on here. And then the Green Bay Packers, I have a DST 2. I'm not too worried about the Browns DST. I don't think I own them anyway. I don't think anyone does. They're at 30. And then, yeah, I have the Browns kicker at 32. But I have Brandon McManus at 8. He should be a start in most formats, in most leagues this season, most of the way through, especially the way they're winning games right now. Vikings, Bengals. Vikings favored by 3. No confidence here in Jake Browning. Over under set 41.5. We have 2 backup QBs in this one, which is why the line is a bit wonky. We have Carson Wentz versus Jake Browning. I think this is harsh on the Bengals. If I had to sit here, I think I'd probably play Browning over Wentz after what we have seen of Wentz in the last few years. He's also just not had a lot of action, whereas at least Browning had a good run 2 years ago. And he's in a system he knows, he's familiar with, he's played in regularly over the last few years. And he knows the pass catchers as well. I think it's an offense he is better set up for and more familiar with than Carson Wentz. I think it's Jordan Mason time over in the Minnesota. And I think if the Vikings do prevail and why they're favorites, they've the best defense here. And therefore, that is where I think they will probably prevail in this game. But I think it's definitely going to be a more interesting game, but perhaps a lower scoring game than people had when they initially marked this card in the preseason. Jake Browning, he is at 20. Carson Wentz is at 27. Super flex options, but should be nowhere near a 1 QB league. In terms of the running backs in this one, Chase Brown had 100% of the RB snaps. He's at 12 this week, but I actually have Jordan Mason at 7. This is going to be set up. I don't think they're going to want Carson Wentz to throw the ball too much this week. And if they do, I think they're going to want it to go to Justin Jefferson, and that's about it. Maybe a little bit of TJ Hawkinson. So I think Jordan Mason's going to get a lot of work. These are the only 2 running backs you need to worry about in this one. And then following on from that, looking at the wide receivers here, Chase is at 4, Justin Jefferson's at 6. Again, struggle to put them higher with the backup quarterbacks in there. T. Higgins is at 24. I think he is probably the biggest loser in the short term to Jake Browning coming in. But they're the only receivers I'm truly interested in as it stands right now. And again, T. Higgins, I don't have a lot of T. Higgins because I always struggle with the ceiling play. But if you've got him, you have to start him. You might have better options as well. Just double check those before you set your lineups. As for TJ Hawkinson, he is at 12. Noah Fant continues to be an interesting figure, although I have him at 30 this week. I just think with Jake Browning, that is going to just tamper expectations a little bit. Mike Gesicki's at 25. I'm probably not starting either tight end this week with no Joe Burrow. I think the passing volume goes way, way down, and it's the tight ends that will probably get the thin end of it. The Vikings I have at 4. The Bengals I have at 16. I think both have opportunities to create turnover wherever he plays. It's probably about the highest I'm going to have the Bengals for the rest of the season. I don't rate this defense at all. Will Reichardt's at 17. Evan McPherson is at 22 this week as it currently stands. Eagles-Rams should be a really good game. Eagles favored by 3.5. Obviously off to a really good start this season and winning the battle of last year's Super Bowl. So we're going to be looking at what they try and do as they try and get to 3-0 and stamp their authority on the rest of the NFC and make a stride to repeat as NFC champions. Matt Stafford, again, is showing things. I think this is a big step up from people he's played so far. So he's at 23 for me, but Jalen Hurts, I think we're still going to see too much run, not enough passing, but I do have him at 3 this week. I do think this is going to be a good week for him to really utilize and move on from where he has been. An opportunity to get right, especially in a game that's probably going to be a bit closer and a game that he's going to be able to go out and make a statement. Saquon Barkley's at 3. I think this is a good matchup for him. They will be able to run the ball here. Kyren Williams at 18. A little bit of concern here. Not loads at this stage. I'm not panicking, but they have paid him, and I wonder if it's about just trying to utilize him and maybe just slowing down the pace a little bit there. Just making sure he doesn't burn out before the end of the season. There's a little bit of that towards the end of last season. Puka Nacua is my wide receiver 3 this week. Devontae Adams, wide receiver 12. AJ Brown, wide receiver 17. Devonta Smith is all the way down at wide receiver 41 this week. I am lower than most on Devonta Smith. I am just worried about that passing volume, and I think that translates. I don't want any part of the tight ends. I have them at 32, 33 this week. Of course, Goddard is questionable, and I think probably more unlikely to go than most of the questionables we talked about so far. Philadelphia Eagles, their defense is at 10 this week. I think this is a good opportunity for them. 24 for the Rams this week. I do think they're going to get beat up a little bit here by the Philadelphia Eagles. And then as for the kickers, Jake Elliott is kicker 12 this week. Josh Carty, kicker 25. I just think there'll be a good volume for the receivers here as they're chasing a game, but I do think the Eagles will come out as worthy winners this week. Next is Patriots Steelers. This is really close. Steelers favored by 1.5 shows you that the Patriots are doing the right things here and are trying to get right on the season. I think in terms of I have to say I'd be very impressed with Drake May and the way he's handling this offense. Ramondre Stevenson has been really good too. It is going to be interesting to see how they get on and marry each other for the rest of the season. When they switch to Henderson, but at the moment Henderson is a sit. Ramondre Stevenson has kind of grabbed the opportunity here as the lead back. It's how I thought it would go, to be honest, at the start of the season. I do think it will wind down as we go through, but at the moment this offense is starting to click a little bit, and that's why I have Drake May at QB7 this week. I have Aaron Rodgers at 24. I think that Steelers is struggling a little bit, as we saw a little bit against the Seahawks, but I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to have some good times for the rest of the season, but this might be a bit of a struggle this week for him. Jaylen Warren is my highest running back in this game. He is at 22. Followed by Ramondre Stevenson at 30. Trayvon Henderson is at 33. And it wouldn't surprise me if he fell from there. Kenneth Gainwell is at 45. He's a very low-end worthy flex play. Caleb Johnson, after that muffed kickoff last week, nowhere near my ranks this week. Metcalf is wide receiver 19. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 46. The volume's okay, but there's no real deep threat. That's going to be an issue. Kayshon Boutte getting more to deep threat balls. He's at 51. He's probably a decent upside play. But against the Steelers, you don't want to get too cute. The Steelers D is still a very, very good defense. Hunter Henry's at 15, and then the two tight ends are at 22 and 23, respectively. As for the Steelers DST, they're still a top 12 for me. They're at 8 this week. But I do think that the Patriots DST is not a terrible flex play. They're at 17, and there is upside to their play as well as they continue to get better under new coaching, especially with Mike Vrabel there. Chris Boswell's my kicker 3. I think he's going to have a good amount of opportunities here. Borregales is at 26 this week. Not a kicker I'm looking to start in too many spots. We have Buccaneers Jets. Buccaneers favored by 7, over under 43.5. I think it's a little generous to the Bucs here, considering that they have lost 3/4 of their O-line this week. I do think it's going to be a bit of a struggle, but I do think I'd expect them to get over the line. Of course, the Jets don't have Justin Fields. They have Tyrod Taylor. Backup QBs are a bit of a kryptonite for the Buccaneers. So I do think this game is perhaps a little bit closer than people are projecting it to be. But I do think the Bucs should have enough talent to get a W and move to 3-0 this week. Baker Mayfield's at 9. Again, I just think this constant changing of the O-line that really is breaking that consistency. Of course, how he's been finishing games has been nothing short of elite. Tyrod Taylor is at 31. I do think this Buccaneers defense will know how to get at him. Of course, no Kalijah Kancey for the rest of the season. That is going to allow for a bit more of the run game to penetrate through. Bucky Irving is at 9, and Breece Hall is at 17. And there might be an opportunity here with no Kalijah Kancey for Breece Hall to potentially turn it on a little bit. I have Rachaad White as a flex player at 41. He looked really good last week on Monday Night Football. And then Braylon Allen at 46. He got the Jets' only touch inside of the 10. He might be a goal line back to keep an eye on, a good buy low opportunity. Keep an eye on him. As for the receivers, Mike Evans is at 14. Garrett Wilson is at 16. Emeka Buka is at 25. He carries a questionable tag, but I do expect him to go. They're the only 3 receivers I'm interested in this game. And then as for the tight ends, nothing I'm really urging to desperate to play. Cade Otton is at 24. Maybe just as a free touchdown chasing option could be there. Mason Taylor is one that is very out of favor, not a player I'm looking to add anytime soon. The Buccaneers are my DST1. I just think they'll get at Tyrod Taylor and really cause some problems. The Jets I have down at 27. And they might flood that with sacks, and maybe they'll not concede too many points. But I don't think the turnover opportunities are going to be there for them. Chase McLaughlin's at 7, but I would say he's probably kicking for his job this week. He's going to need to come out firing. Nick Folk is down at 30. And then the final game of the slate. Jaguars-Texans. Jaguars favored by 1.5, which I don't know if I agree with. Over under set 44.5 feels a better line. I just think the Texans, bit of game management, and they did struggle. They like to run the football, and they haven't run it as best they could. I think you might see a bit more Woody Marks over the coming weeks, so we're going to see how that goes on. But I actually think that the Jaguars, whilst they're showing some things, I do think they haven't quite figured out their best offensive game plan. And that is affecting the likes of Brian Thomas Jr. And I spent 15 minutes on our Patreon cast that went out this morning talking about him and what I actually think about the Jag situation. So, do yourself a favor. You can try all the Patreon for £0 at the moment, but you can subscribe for just a couple of dollars a month. You get a weekly Patreon cast from me breaking down trends, who I think is up and coming, and talking about those key situations every week and giving you some real deep insight and analysis into each one. So do keep an eye on that and do subscribe. The link is just down below. So please do follow our Patreon, and hopefully you'll find a lot of real value in that. You also find value. Our book is in there, which you can basically get a copy to if you're in access to Patreon. So, hey, we're giving you something for very little money. You join for $3 a month, and you get access to our WhatsApp channel and everything else. There's lots of good things and lots of good reasons to join in. When we get to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence is a player that I'm keeping an eye on. He's at 16. CJ Stroud at 18. I've just hedged my bets a little bit. I was more bullish in the offseason about CJ Stroud that we would see a get-right season. It's not happened as of yet, but he has had a tough opening cast. Travis Etienne, he's at 13. He's been terrific so far. Nick Chubb is at 34. And for me, he's a guy I'm really interested in seeing how it pans out. He got basically a pass in the final 2.5 minutes of the game on Monday night where he was allowed to score a touchdown, and that really massaged his stats. And I think had he not scored that touchdown, a lot of people will be asking whether Nick Chubb's going to be good enough to start next week or this week and beyond. And that's why I think it is going to be interesting. I have him at 34 this week, just ahead of Baishal Tootin, who's really starting to come along and show what he can do. He's at 36. I've got Woody Marks at 56, but it wouldn't shock me if Woody Marks started getting more and more work. He definitely looked more explosive at the backs on Monday Night Football. Moving on to the wide receivers in this game, I have Nico Collins at 9. I have Brian Thomas Jr. at 11. I have Travis Hunter at 44. I have Diami Brown at 60. And that's how I'm seeing those situations right now. This could be a decent opportunity for Brenton Strange as a potential touchdown bet. He's at 17, and Dalton Schultz the same. He's at 19. Wouldn't shock me if one of these two got into the end zone this week. And then as for the defenses, Houston Texans are at 11. I actually fancy them to win this game. The Jacksonville Jaguars are at 19. And then when it comes to the kickers, I have this week them both inside the top 10. Kaimi Fairbairn is at 9. Cam Little is at 10. That's going to do it for part one. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll cover a little bit of Thursday Night Football. Sometimes I pre-record it. I'm actually going to record part two tomorrow after Thursday Night Football, so I'll give you some analysis from there. Let me know what you think of the mic. Was the audio and everything come through okay? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Join our Discord. Join the discussions. There's going to be lots of really good, interesting talking points this week. You'll get access to my rankings. They're all in there, what I've just shown on the screen and broken down. You're going to get access to those just by joining the Discord. Don't even have to pay for that. So give that a shout. Join the discussions. You can ask me questions, which I'll answer on tonight's flagship show. So if you've got some questions you want to ask, then make sure you do it there. Until then, Rush Nation, thank you very much for watching. We look forward to talking to you later. And don't forget, as always, keep rushing.